everybody, Trevor here. Remember my top 5 Duck episodes back in February of this year? Well, that's one reason why I'm making this video. The second reason is that when it comes to my favorite duos in Thomas and Friends, two of which are Oliver and his break fan Toad. So that's why today's subject is my top 5 favorite episodes starring them. Now, as the title suggests, the episode must star either Oliver, Toad, or both. So I won't count any side roles like Bulgy from season 3. And keep in mind that some of these candidates will have more than one episode in each spot, and you'll see why later. Now without further ado, let's do this top 5 video the Great Western Way. Oh wait, that's Duck's line. My bad. Number 5 is Snow Engine, aka Oliver the Snow Engine in the US dub. This is a season 7 episode when Oliver is so cold that he's getting sick and tired of the snow, but Toad insisted that snow is magical and splendid, much to Oliver's annoyance. Meanwhile, some children were building a giant snowman and it grew bigger every time Oliver and Toad passed by it. But then one day, due to slippery rails caused by the icy weather, Oliver and Toad slipped, crashed into a set of buffers, and ran into the giant snowman that the children had just built. Now, Oliver was worried that the children would be upset about the ruined snowman, and to make matters worse, Oliver and Toad had to stay put all night during the cold, snowy season, which made Toad seem to realize that Oliver might be right about snow. The next day, the children decided to make Oliver their snow engine by decorating in front of him, and they didn't seem very upset at all. This gets Oliver to change his mind about snow, and that he didn't want to leave the area after all. While I did enjoy this episode from season 7, and I still do, but the reason I put it as number 5 is because it does have a few problems. For instance, how was Toad able to slide like this right next to Oliver after crashing into the snowman? It just seems unrealistic and cartoony. Also, season 7 was one of the weaker classic seasons in terms of narration and writing. Not to mention Michael Brandon giving Oliver a Western American accent. I know this is the US dub and all, but if Alec Baldwin did decide to narrate season 7 in the first place, he probably would have done a much better job since he gave the iconic duo British accents back in season 5. But regardless, this is a decent episode because it shows us that sometimes snow can be fun and magical, and that there are a ton of great things about winter other than the cons. And while season 7 is overall okay, but I'll always treasure it along with most of the other seasons by Hit Entertainment just for the sake of nostalgia. Number 4 is a tie between Toad and the Whale and Toad's Bright Idea. I decided to make these a tie of 2 because they are two of my favorite CGI episodes starring Toad the Break Fan. Toad and the Whale is about Toad finding a stranded whale on the beach and wants to help it get back into the water by alerting the sort of search and rescue team. But they had to take the whale by flatbed because Butch would not be strong enough to tow the whale back into the ocean, and that the tide was too far away from the whale. One of my favorite moments in this episode is Toad's singing voice provided by Joe Mills, who also voices Oliver in this series. I especially love the sweet moment where Toad sings to the whale to calm it down while bringing it back to the ocean at Brandon Docks. Fun fact, the song that Toad sings is the same one used at the end of Thomas the Quarry Engine in season 18, and the song is known as I Do Like to Be Beside the Seaside, which was a famous song in the UK. Alright, now let's talk about Toad's Bright Idea. This takes place during the events of Tale of the Brave, where Toad must work with Gator during a foggy night. Toad tries to reason with Gator about the fog, but Gator just wouldn't listen and decides to go on without him for a while. After Gator discovers gravel on the tracks, which would cause some engine to derail, he learns that he needs Toad's guidance after all and remembers to always keep his headlamp on no matter what the weather. So, bottom line, when it comes to CGI episodes starring Toad, these two deserve the number 4 spot for these reasons alone. If you're a die-hard Thomas fan like I am, whether it's the models or CGI, I highly recommend these two episodes to your family and friends because they're very enjoyable to watch. Number 3 is a 3-way tie. Escape, Oliver owns up, and Toad stands by. There's a huge reason why these three are on the number 3 spot, and it's not because of the 3-way tie pun, It's because these three connect to each other in the TV series, two of which were part of season 3. Escape was their first debut. Oliver Owns Up takes place afterwards, and after that, we get Toad Stands By in season 4. I'll break these down into a few tiny pieces. Escape is about Douglas saving Oliver and Toad from Scrap by helping them escape from Vickerstown, where the Diesels work. And thanks to Douglas, Oliver was the perfect engine they needed for Duck's branch line, and as a result, they were repainted and were now good friends to Duck. Oliver Owns Up is the second part of Oliver's arc. This is where he learns about handling the Charleston trucks. The other engines warned him about them, but he didn't care at first. And because of his ignorance, the Charleston trucks get the best of him by pushing him all the way down into the turntable well. Thus, Oliver learns his lesson, gets prepared after a few days at the works, and learns to never make a mistake about trucks again. That was until season 5, but we'll get to that later. And finally, we have Toad Stands By, which is part of season 4, and this time, Oliver encounters an old privately owned ballast truck named Scruffy, who was the ringleader of the Charleston trucks. In order to teach Scruffy and the other trucks a lesson, Toad plans to stay and help Oliver shunt them 2 by 2 until the train was long and heavy, with Scruffy being at the front. And after a great heave, Oliver pulled Scruffy apart, spilling ballast all over the place. But later, Scruffy was rebuilt, and he and the trucks finally learned their lesson afterwards. Fun fact, in the original Railway Series story, after Scruffy was pulled apart, he was never rebuilt and therefore scrapped. In other words, he had the same exact fate as the spiteful brake van. Though I guess it's for the greater good to not kill off Scruffy because, after all, it is a kid's show, and I don't want any characters dying in the show anymore. So in conclusion, because of these reasons alone, these memorable episodes deserve the number 3 spot, and it's also because they are some of the first episodes starring Oliver and Toad together. I highly recommend you give them an honest chance since they're just that great. Number 2, Oliver's Find. In this season 5 episode, Oliver was feeling glum and wishes for a nice run rather than staying in the shunting yards rearranging the Charleston trucks. But after causing an accident with the trucks once again, Sir Thomas had suggested that Oliver should take the mail train for a while. Later, Oliver and his mail train were switched to an old track due to the signalman sleeping through the night. Oliver tried to get his attention by whistling, but he just wouldn't wake up. When they went the wrong way, they arrived at an old station and crashed into an old engine shed. The next day, Sir Thomas had decides to go on a search party with Harold the helicopter. After they found Oliver and his crew at the old station, Sir Thomas Hat discovers an old abandoned house nearby and thought it would make a perfect attraction for visitors, much to Oliver's happiness. So all in all, this is one of my favorite episodes when it comes to season 5, mainly because of Alec Baldwin's British impressions for Oliver and Toad, as well as the two characters themselves. Oh, and I think Oliver said it best regarding the episode's overall subtle message.
Sighed Oliver. Getting lost can be interesting, but being found is much nicer. Especially when it makes an engine feel really useful.
Before I get to number 1, I just want to give at least one honorable mention. Toad's Adventure. I decided not to include this one on the list because it's basically a rehash of a certain season 5 episode, which I'm going to get into right about now. Number 1 is Busy Going Backwards. Not only is this one of my favorite season 5 episodes, but it's my most favorite starring role of both Oliver and Toad. I personally love the action, suspense, the two characters themselves, as well as being voiced by Alec Baldwin in the US dub. And I especially love the inclusion of the Lone Ranger theme mixed in with the classic Runaway theme. Also, this is Toad's true first adventure, as he was tired of going backwards and wanted to go forwards for once, which gives the Charleston trucks a chance for mischief. And in the end, after Toad splashed into a muddy pool and was pulled out by Oliver, Toad decides that it's best for him to travel backwards from now on. After all, he is a brake fan. Another thing I love about this episode is the part where Oliver says, "A pond is the only place for a toad, I suppose," which I thought was a perfect way of describing Toad's aftermath from the runaway chase sequence, And that's British humor at its finest, in my humble opinion. So, out of all the episodes starring Oliver and Toad, this is my most favorite of the bunch for these reasons alone. It's one of the reasons why I love season 5 so much. I suggest you give it an honest watch. Now, let me know in the comment section below on which of these Thomas episodes starring the duo are your favorite. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? Join me in my next top 5 video where I discuss my favorite Thomas video games, particularly those on the PC and Mac computers because those were true classics. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.